Hello, everybody. Kay Crystal Griffith here, and welcome back to another edition of Emotions, Wisdom, and Your Body. So, for all of 2021, we are delving into understanding more about your emotions from a body, soul, and spirit perspective. Can you tell that I can't talk tonight? I am so excited to be here with you guys tonight. Here's your disclaimer. I am not a doctor. I don't play one on TV or social media platforms. I'm a researcher. I also have my master's in education, 2 emotional trauma certifications, inner healing accreditations, and more. And really, this is for your education, edification, and encouragement. So let's get started tonight. So tonight is a fun word. Tonight is courage. And sometimes we hear courage under fire, courage to run into a burning building. Other times, as for me today, courage was getting a huge project submitted for a certified coaching position that I'm being certified for. So that was a lot of courage because that was 10 weeks and 1,000 pages and of reading and 100 hours of training. And it was pretty intense, but the courage to step out. The courage to say, not sure how it's going to happen, but Lord, let's go. Courage to ride the roller coaster of life, really, folks. That's what we're in, the roller coaster of life. And the only thing that we can control, guess what? Is our attitude, our reaction in it. Because sometimes it just gets thrown to us, right? Courage, Tillich says, is the power of life to affirm itself in spite of its ambiguity. Courage is the mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or even difficulty. I think courage is also about faith. It's the faith to step out, just like Peter in the boat. Do you remember that? When Jesus was out walking on the water and he said, "Come on over, man." And long as he had his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on the water. But what happened? The minute he took his eyes off, what happened? Down he went, right? So courage is also about our faith, of keeping our eyes on the person who is going to be able to walk us through to the other side of whatever we're walking in. And so let's talk a little bit about understanding how it works in our body. We know it's a positive. Courage is a positive. And so this is kind of interesting. They found some new information about your brain having an actual courage circuit. And this is where humans and animals integrate visual information with a brain circuit that controls firstly our emotional states and afterwards our behaviors and actions. So it first hits visually, it controls our emotional, then our behavior and our actions respond appropriately. Fight, flight, fear, or fate, right? So in a recent study, a new set of neurons in the brain called VMT, they've learned receives information from this wide range of brain areas that then processes internally. And that could be fear, but it then sends information out very selectively. It's almost like it filters it through and says, okay, this piece of information I'm going to send here, and this piece of information I'm going to send there. And that's how they now understand how selective that brain circuit can be for courage, as well as fear and anger. It's very fascinating. And so really, they're talking about the amygdala, which we have talked about so many times on the show, and the prefrontal cortex, where anxiety tends to live, right? Which seems to be rooted for many of our negative emotions we have talked about. The amygdala processes fear, aggression, and other emotions, while the prefrontal cortex uses this executive function to modulate those emotional responses. Now, there's a whole bunch of science there that the thalamus is part of that, and then you have the hippocampus and all that fun stuff. But really, the key here is understanding that your amygdala can hijack your frontal lobe. Yeah, that's not such a good thing. And because when it hijacks your frontal lobe and your emotions, you are certainly not going to be courageous in that moment. You're probably going to be cowering in a corner, or you're going to be in downstairs brain, as we like to call it here. And you're not able to regulate yourself and process anything that's going on within you. So it's super important to understand that. So when we talk about courage, we're talking about really that effect the amygdala has on the prefrontal cortex to where we rise up out of downstairs brain and say, we are not staying there. We are going to handle this and we're going to make a stand for something, whether that be good, bad, or indifferent, but we're willing to make a stand for it. Now, here's what happens with people with anxiety, though. People who measure high on anxiety scales often exhibit less courage than people with low measures of anxiety. So basically, if you have higher anxiety, you're less courageous, is what they're suggesting. Now, I want to give you a caveat to that. I know people who have really high anxiety, and with good reason. And they are some of the most courageous people I've ever met, because every day it takes courage to just live their life because of the trauma they have been through. And so I just want to remind you that even though I give you some of these facts as facts, they're not always accurate in real life. And remember, whatever God is suggesting or encouraging or walking you through is always going to take precedence over whatever you see on the world around here. So like that whole diagnosis on an x-ray scan, what you see is not always what you get, right? All right. So people who have anxiety can behave in courageous ways, especially when they learn to cope with their anxiety and confront frightening obstacles. So when we are brave, we stand tall, our shoulders are back, our chin is up, our eyes are looking straight, and our voice is strong. The thoughts going through our head are very clear and they're not racing. Now, if you're in fear, you're cowering, you're racing, you can't modulate what's going on in your head. So you can see that courage and fear, even though they stem from the amygdala and they filter through that new neuron system, that VMT that we just talked about, the fact is then when it's selectively filtered through, fear goes one way and courage goes the other. Isn't that exciting? Now, can you have too much courage? Well, it can inspire you to act recklessly. If you supposedly have courage to get on one of those jumper things over the side of a bridge and bounce, you go for it. I don't need that courage. So, I think courage can kind of do a couple things for you. You can also have the courage to say, no, thanks, not for me. And I'm good with that kind of courage too. Otherwise, you might have the courage to say, well, I'm willing to try it. I tried the zip line one time. Haven't lost anything on it since. Probably won't find anything on it after this either. One time was my goal. We'll have that story another day. So basically, courage can otherwise help us identify ways to walk out courage. And psychology today suggests a couple of ways to really practice walking in courage. Sometimes we have to feel the fear to choose to act courageously. Anybody who runs into a burning building, I guarantee you they're feeling some fear. But it's typically that adrenaline rush of going like, I know I need to go help my kid, or I need to get that person out. Or like today, we passed a horrific car accident and we rolled down the window. Do you guys need us to call 911? What's going on? And somebody was out in the front seat. And so I knew we needed to pray. And so in that moment, they had plenty of people to help in the situation. So what was our option? We prayed. And we asked the Lord to come over there and help everybody involved to have clarity of mind, because their adrenaline was running, right? Partly fear with what just happened, but then they had to find the courage because now they had to deal with everything that was going on. So another piece of walking in courage is also following your heart. Oftentimes we think that choice to follow our heart has to be kind of modulated by the world and get their opinions and should I and shouldn't I? And here's the thing, on that big D day at the end of our time, that's really you and God. That's it in the grand scheme of things. Your mom's not going to be there. Your dad's not going to be there. Your spouse isn't going to be there. Your ex isn't going to be there. Your best friend's not going to be there. Although I told her she couldn't die without me. So we should be up there together. And so, guys, the fact is it's really just you and God. And so ultimately your decisions are your decisions, nobody else's. So ask the Lord what you're supposed to do in those decisions, right? So how about persevering in the face of adversity? It's never pleasant when you are faced with a medical diagnosis, or like those people that had the car accident tonight, or even people who, in the face of adversity, for a lot of people right now, I'm going to be honest, putting on a mask to get on an airplane, that it conjures up a lot of fear, especially if they've ever had that kind of trauma where their face or their neck was inhibited in some type of trauma. And that's a whole nother story, but that's adversity for those people. And so Mark Twain says, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And so sometimes when we have to kind of buck up and suck up and make something happen, that's where we find that courage in the system. So how about expanding your horizons, letting go of the familiar? Moving for some people is hugely courageous. And finding new friends and finding a new church and getting connected into the community. Those can all be courageous building exercises. But within there is still that little fear of possibly being rejected or not being able to make friends. And especially for our kiddos, that is really important to realize. Whenever there's a move, as much as we say our kids are resilient, they're not as resilient as we want to think they are. And they just stuff their feelings because they don't know how to talk about them. And they come back out when they're adults. So we really want to give those kiddos the opportunity to talk, even to move from school to school. So around here where we are, you move from an elementary school to a middle school and then to a high school. And so each one filters in more and more kids into the system. So now you're making newer friends, and then your little group expands and the cliques are different. And I wish we could get rid of cliques. But anyway, so it could be a frightening experience, full though of courage to say, I'm now going to a new school and I get to kind of reinvent myself sometimes. And so that could be a courage building exercise for them as well. Standing up for what is right. Anger is the prelude to courage, according to Eric Hoffer. So anger is the prelude to courage. And sometimes our courage, it comes out of a cause, of an effect of someone putting down your kid, or someone, causing an issue at work, and that that's not right, and you want to stand up for that injustice, basically. So again, courage, mind your manners with it, but you can certainly use that to your advantage. And then the last one is facing suffering with dignity or faith. There is no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bear witness that a man has the greatest of courage and the courage to suffer. And that's by Viktor Frankl. We mentioned him yesterday. And, he was a Holocaust survivor who saw some of the most horrible tragedies and atrocities in several concentration camps. And if we think about only imagining what he could have imagined, the courage to truly not give up in despair is the ultimate courage, really. So how do we kind of countermeasure courage? Well, do we need to? But we definitely need to increase it, right? We can all use a healthy dose of injection of courage. So we need to remember that we create the world we live in with our choices, with the way we interpret the events, with what's happened to us, and the people that we give our power to. My daughter and I have that conversation all the time. Don't give your power away. Your power is your power. And the minute that you buy into something that somebody else has said or done or act according to you, you have now given your power to them. So take courage, make a stand, and don't give your power to them. And we also have a little saying of be a duck and let whatever they're saying or doing roll off your back, just like water off a duck, so it doesn't stick to you. So persistence is an important strength to courage because it reinforces the fact that this kind of courage that we're talking about isn't one moment in time, but many moments that build upon each other to grow that strength in our courage. And in the face of obstacles, both internal and external. And I would tell you, inner healing is a great opportunity to pull out any obstacles that are keeping your courage from emerging as well. So to increase your courage, they would tell you, as the world, stop dreaming and make a plan. I would tell you, God has already instilled a plan in you, and you should dream and you should walk in it. That's where your courage comes. Taking that first step out to say, okay, God, let's do this. And you've got that connection going here. So it's not you just stepping out and then asking God to co-sign the loan with you, but it's you going to him and going, do we need this loan or do we need this loan? And how are we going to get there? And then getting that okay and that light to know that you're going to step out in faith. And then through that obedience, God's going to open the doors for you. And it is going to seem easier than it ever has been. I got a whole story about buying the house I'm in that reaffirms that. Now, stop doing what you hate. Well, I will tell you, typically, whatever it is that you're doing that you hate, you're not in congruence. And probably God hasn't called you to it. And so you can't be authentic if you're doing things that you just hate doing. So stop it. It's not easy, right? Because really, all you're going to do is complain about it. And it's going to infect you with lots of toxicity. And we don't want that. So we also want to turn a big obstacle like a mountain back into a molehill. Oftentimes we've turned the molehill into a mountain, so let's turn it back into a molehill, right? Do something others scoff at. I thought this one was kind of interesting. And they likened it to driving an older model car because maybe you're saving money for a different car. Maybe you're on the budget plan. Maybe you're realizing that retirement monies are more important than having the latest and greatest $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 car. The fact that cars are that much just seems a little ridiculous, but they are. And so some people will kind of just think less of you for that. This is also why I tell people not to judge a book by a cover, because if you're doing any of the financial people's little budgeting system, your car is going to look like a piece of junk sometimes. But you got a bigger bank account than the people driving the bigger cars and the nicer cars and the fancier cars, right? And really, ultimately, what's your kingdom impact? What's your kingdom motivation for your money? And that's going to really determine your attitude towards what people are saying about you or through you or to you. Most of the time, they never say it to your face anyways. So another one is let go of what you can't control. You can control how you react, but you can't control what other people are saying or doing, right? So your attitude, your interaction, your reaction to things going on in your life, good, bad, or indifferent, is what you can control. And then the other one is letting go of people who hold you back. And that one's kind of hard. Having courage to do that and realize what your influences need to be in your life so you stay on the path that God's called you to. And that might look like you not having the same group of friends. And it might look like you entering into a different arena of friends so they can keep you in like-mindedness and keep you on your goals. Perhaps it's a season. Perhaps it's long-term. Who knows? So what are our wisdom verses? Well, the first thing is I wanted to call this out because I was helping somebody tonight on some tech support and she got on the Zoom. She goes, "Hello, courageous warrior." And I was like, that was so cool. and it was really just based on something that she'd read about me on the web. And I just thought that was so neat to be called that. And I want to call you guys that because that's what we are in God's kingdom. We are courageous warriors and we fight for the king. And when he calls us in and he wants us to go do something, we are girded up with power and sovereignty, authority, and greatness to go out and do on his behalf. That makes us courageous warriors. So it's already within you. Isn't that cool? So here's a couple other verses. 1 Corinthians 16:13. Be on your guard. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Matthew 17:20. He said to them, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have faith like the grain of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there. And it will move and nothing will be impossible for you. I got one of those cool stories too. I'll share with you one day. And then Esther. Gotta love Esther. Talk about a courageous warrior, like one that literally was looking down death's door, and not just for her, but for her whole people group. And if she did not step out, if she did not take that one step out, guess what was going to happen? Her entire race, her entire ethnicity would have been gone. So Esther 4:15-16. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days or nights. And I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, which, by the way, is against the law. You don't go to the king unless you are asked. And if I perish, I perish. That is the ultimate courageous statement right there. And I would tell you, it really is second to it is finished with Jesus on the cross. But that statement of if I perish, I perish, willing to surrender all that she was, including her own life, to save her people. Now, no one is asking you to do that. What we're asking you to do today is to make the choice to step out. Step out into the destiny God's already infused in you. It is in there percolating. Let it out. Let out your destiny. If you want help, I am happy to do that. You ping me on any of these social media platforms and I will be there for you because I know that you are here to change the world for kingdom impact. That's why you're here. So let's get to it. Now, how are you going to use all this amazing, courageous information? Remember, you want to use it in wisdom, apply it, understand it. So how has courage been showing up in your life? Has there been a lack? Have you been living in more fear than courage? Have you been allowing the amygdala to hijack your frontal lobe? Let's shut that down. How has your courage been negative, more on the fear side, or positive? And how can you transform courage to your leverage, to your advantage, to your strength, to your wisdom? So take the scriptures, put your name in there, and then go live. Share with us what you learned today about courage. Tomorrow's word is timid. That's kind of what we may feel as we walk into these courageous actions, kind of going, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't think I want to do this. And yet you're still plugging along, one foot in front of the other. Kudos. Way to go. Let's do it together. So join us again tomorrow for more on emotions, wisdom in your body. Register at K Crystal Griffith for more insights and your feelings wheel. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. Take care.